Hi guys, here today to do the next card in our Suit of Cups series. Feeling kind of summery here today because it's a beautiful day. And today we're going to talk about the Eight of Cups, which is not a beautiful day kind of card. Very different from that sentiment. The Eight of Cups, again, is one of these less than great cards in the tail end of the cup suit. As we've been moving down the tree of life in this series, we've seen how really water has suffered tremendously the further we move down. It really started immediately with the Four of Cups, as Crowley tells us, but it really disintegrates it by the Seven and the Eight. And it really is because of in the Seven and the Eight, we get such a gross misunderstanding of what pleasure is and what the purpose of pleasure is, and what pleasure really symbolizes, I guess, or means on a spiritual and psychological level. And so let's get right to it. It's actually a pretty simple card. I just read through what he has to say about it, and it's very simple stuff here. The 8 Hod, or the Sephir of Hod, in the Suit of Water governs this card. It shows the influence of Mercury, but this is overpowered by the influence of Saturn and Pisces. So yes, the astrologically the card is Saturn in Pisces. Not really a great combination because Pisces tends to be much more interested in the ideal and the imaginative and the fantastical, and far less interested in reality. And Saturn is so much more about reality and heaviness. So already we've got this feeling of doldrums and a lack of dreaming in a way, stagnant dreams. Pisces is calm but stagnant water, and Saturn deadens it completely, he says. Water appears no longer as the sea but as pools, and there is no fluorescence in this card as there was in the last. The lotuses droop for lack of sun and rain. So he goes on and on in the rest of this paragraph to basically says that the entire card is really poisonous and really just terrible and devoid of water. I think really the thing that he emphasizes in this paragraph, the cups are shallow, old, and broken. Water trickles from the two flowers into the two central cups, and they drip into the two lowest without filling them. The background shows pools, lagoons, incapable of cultivation. Only disease and poison can flourish in these badlands. So I think that's really interesting, considering that we are not all the way down on the tree of life yet, and yet this card uh, suffers from a severe lack of water, and it is really the opposite of the seven. And really, he says that himself. The water is dark and muddy on the horizon, is pallid. Compare with the last card, it represents the opposite and complementary error. The one is the Garden of Kundry, the other is the Palace of Klingzor. Now, this is of course a reference to the great Wagnerian opera Parsifal, which Crowley suggests, well, believes, I should say, it was inspired by Wagner's dealings with the OTO. Uh, Supposed dealings, really, as a music history person as well. That is not well fleshed out historically. I've never really heard of anything in any of my music classes or readings or anything like that Wagner was involved with that. But considering the intensity and real occult vibes happening in a lot of Wagner's operas, uh, particularly the Ring Cycle, in addition to Parsifal, um, it is conceivable that Wagner perhaps was influenced a little bit by certain esoteric occult trends that were popular at the period in the period. Possibly, but I can't say that definitively myself. But what's important to realize is that he's saying that this card, the 8, is the opposite of the 7, whereas the 7 is overindulgence and just drowning in pleasure, and how that card was a swamp. This card is the exact opposite. It's a total almost abstention from pleasure, and there's just no pleasure in it whatsoever. The pleasure is so dried up and broken and neglected that it's still just as poisonous as the seven and still as infertile and gross as the seven, just in a totally different way. So, and it is because there is not this balanced appreciation for pleasure that you get in the six. Really, everything below the six, with the set, or rather, I should say, everything in the astral triangle below the six minus the nine really is quite gross, and that is really because the seven and the eight are the last two cards in the suit that are not connected in any way to the central pillar of the Tree of Life. So this is not getting any influence from Tiferet, not getting any influence from Keter. Whereas Yesod, the number 9, which we'll talk about tomorrow, which is a good card, of course, this is a card that you want to get in your readings. The Nine of Cups, on the other hand, is positive and is good because it's back on the central pillar. We regain this sense of balance and this sense of fulfillment. But with the 8, we don't get that. And whatever mobility that may be represented by Mercury is really crushed and suffocated by the overwhelming influence of Saturn in this card. Saturn really puts a damper on whatever party the cup suit was having before. And Pisces is not strong enough to counteract that, nor is its Sephirotic position on the Tree of Life strong enough. The number 8, Hod, is not strong enough, not being on the central pillar. It's not strong enough to overcome that heavy, powerful influence expressed by Saturn. So this card, Crowley describes this card yeah, as really as sort of like someone who plans a party, puts a lot of effort into planning the party, and then the guests arrive and they realize that they don't actually want to have the party, and that all of their efforts really were not what they actually wanted. So there is this sense of abandonment that you get with this card that is very well expressed in the Waite Smith deck. That is the traditional image of the guy abandoning the cups to sort of pursue something else. Is very similar in connotation. The last bit that he says that is sort of interesting about the 8 is that in the psychopathology of the path, this card is the German measles of Christian mysticism. So I looked this up once, and if I can remember, the path, of course, is basically just the spiritual progress of an individual, the great work. And German measles is sort of, I want to say, kind of like the common cold in a sense of Christian mysticism. So he is saying that this is really sort of the persistent problem and source of disease contained in Christian mysticism. And this is really a dig at the whole idea of asceticism contained in traditional Christian mysticism. It is an attack on any mystic who has ever said deny yourself, and that will lead you to a spiritual truth. It's this idea that in and of itself is just as imbalanced as you know alcoholism and oversexing yourself. I mean, neither of those paths are the way to truth. Neither of those are going to give you a real reflection of what happiness and pleasure really are. And neither of those have a real spiritual integrity to them. The whole point is that they don't, and that's why they're so bad, being off the middle pillar. They don't have any spirituality in them, and therefore the mundane aspects of these cards really weigh them down, really make them gross, really make them bad cards. So in readings, I interpret this. It is called the Lord of Indolence, and so it does sometimes feel like just not wanting to partake in pleasure or society. Sort of ignoring one's friends, possibly keeping to oneself, not really celebrating in any way. Sort of, it's also in some ways can be seen as a hangover kind of card, like a day after kind of card. This is the card of I need another cup of coffee. Like, it just is a really heavy, gross card, and it feels just like boredom and ennui, feeling like there's no real point to some certain pursuit of pleasure. Okay, so nothing too particularly crazy with that, but it's still interesting stuff. So I hope that helps, and don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter now at Prince of Cups 518, and you can check out my new website, www.polyphonictarot.com. And I am still having my summer sale, so you guys know, until the 16th. Buy one reading over $20, get another half off. And yeah, so check that out. All right, thanks, guys, and take care. Bye.